This book is called The Secret of the Science of Getting Rich by Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher. And it seems like it expands on the science of getting rich or kind of looks at things in a different way. Chapter 9 happens to be called Acting in a Certain Way, which I thought would go good with chapter 11 from The Science of Getting Rich, which also happened to be titled Acting in a Certain Way. Many of today's most influential success ideas can be traced back to Napoleon Hill. When he was in his early 20s, he was working for a magazine as a young reporter. The magazine was going to do an article on wealthy people. Hill got the phenomenal job of interviewing the wealthiest man in the world at that time, Andrew Carnegie. This was 1908. Hill got 3 hours with Carnegie. Hill didn't know that Carnegie was looking for someone to carry out a task. Carnegie thought it was an absolute crime that people like himself, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Harvey Firestone and others were going to their graves with all the knowledge they had locked up in their bones. All of them had come up from nothing. Carnegie came over from Scotland as a very young boy to the east coast of the United States. He started out with nothing, but became the wealthiest man in the world. As Hill was interviewing Carnegie thought, this might be the guy I'm looking for. He was looking for someone that could organize all the knowledge and write down the laws of achievement so anybody could learn what he knew. At the end of the 3-hour interview, Carnegie said to Hill, "The interview isn't ending, it's just beginning." He wanted Hill to come home with him. Hill was glad he asked because Hill didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room. Where was this kid's mind at? He didn't have enough money to rent a hotel room, and he's going home with the wealthiest man in the world. That would be a bit of a trip in itself, but he spent 3 days with Carnegie. Carnegie kept asking him questions, and he kept asking Carnegie questions. At the end of 3 days, Carnegie thought, I think this is a guy. So he said to Napoleon, you've got all this information. You know exactly how I got here. I've spent 3 days sharing my entire philosophy with you. I want to ask you a question. Would you dedicate the rest of your life to an idea for which you will probably receive no material compensation for at least 20 years? At the time, Hill didn't know that Carnegie had a stopwatch in his hand under the desk, and he was giving him 60 seconds to answer the question. Hill said, yes, I will, in 29 seconds. I asked myself many times whether I would have said yes. I think I would have. If I spent 3 days with this guy, I would have a pretty good idea on whether he was fair, and I don't think he'd ask me to do something that wasn't fair. Carnegie said, I want you to organize and write the laws of achievement. I will give you letters of introduction to some of the most accomplished people in the world. You'll have no trouble getting in to see these people. I want you to spend time with them. I want you to ask them questions. Carnegie continued, Napoleon, long before you finish this, everything in you is going to want to quit. By the way, I'm not going to subsidize you. You're going to have to make your own way while you're doing this, but I'm going to give you something that you can use when you want to quit. I want you to say to yourself, Andrew Carnegie, I'll not only equal your achievements in life, but I'm going to challenge you at the post and pass you at the grandstand. Hill is broke. He is looking at the wealthiest man in the world, and he's asking, and he's making a commitment. Andrew Carnegie, not only equal your achievement in life, but I'm going to challenge you at the post and pass you at the grandstand. At that point, Hill threw his pen on the floor and said, now you know darn well I'm not going to be able to do that. But Carnegie had told him that if you plant an idea in your subconscious mind, it has to happen. He spent 3 days explaining all of this, telling him about the subconscious mind and how it'll accept anything as real and then work at manifesting it. Carnegie said, I want you to make a commitment that you'll look in the mirror and repeat that every morning and every night for 30 days. I could do that, said Hill. When he first started to do this exercise, he thought he was being stupid. After the first time he had read the sentence, he said, this is silly, this couldn't possibly happen. But he had made a commitment, so he decided that he would stick with it and do it. After about 15 days, he thought maybe that could happen. By the end of the month, he knew it could happen. What I'm doing here is sharing the information that Hill gathered. I have studied this for a long time. Through the studies I've done, I've concluded that Carnegie made maybe 50 millionaires. Napoleon Hill may have made millions of millionaires. Hill has given a vision and he developed very powerful friends. His mastermind group include Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Harvey Firestone. And ask yourself, who are your mastermind partners? Whom am I mixing with? Whom am I really tapping into? I don't spend a lot of time with anybody that doesn't really make it happen because their thinking will go into my subconscious mind. Earl Nightingale, a broadcaster in Chicago, partnered with Lloyd Conant. These two came together to sell a record called The Strangest Secret. They sold over 1 million copies all over the world. I was working with them when it was given the first gold record for spoken record. In 1963, I got a hold of Success Unlimited, a magazine that was put out by W. Clement Stone, that was the forerunner to Success magazine of today. Success Unlimited was a little house organ that he used for his insurance companies. I saw an ad in the magazine that Nightingale Conant was looking for consultants to work in at a company. I thought, I'm going to do that. By 1968, I was their vice president of sales. And then in parts of the chapters, there's little sections that kind of repeats things that thinks are important from earlier in the chapter. So it says, ask yourself, who are my mastermind partners? Who am I mixing with? Who am I really tapping into? How did that happen? It happened because I kept listening to the record and I kept listening to my mentor. You get an idea in your conscious, you hold that idea and you plant it in your subconscious mind. That idea grows, becomes a desire, and ultimately changes the vibration you're in and the results that you're getting. That is really the whole philosophy that Napoleon Hill shared with us. More people are really extras in their own movie. Ask yourself, what do you really want? Think of the levels of vibration as frequencies. You think on frequencies, and these thoughts will produce the results that you're getting. Now, you're never happy with the results you're getting. You always want more. So you say, that's where I want to go. But you say, I'm going to do that as soon as this changes. I'm going to do that as soon as I get the money. I'm going to do that as soon as the kids are out of school. I'm going to do that as soon as dot dot dot. And pretty soon that decision dies. Shortly after that, the goal that you're seeking dies. Why? Because your thoughts are down on a lower frequency and your goal is up on a much higher frequency. Your mind and thoughts must operate on the same frequency as your goal. If your mind and thoughts are not operating on the same frequency, it is never going to happen. You're going to make a committed decision. This is what I'm going to do. When you start talking about the science of getting rich, you don't screw around with ordinary decisions. It's got to be a committed decision. This I will do. And then have another box of something that's repeated. To operate on a higher frequency, make a committed decision, then think and act like the person you want to become. Now I'm going to tell you what happens when you make a committed decision. You got to think and act like the person you want to become. You'll notice you're not on the lower frequency anymore. You're up here on the higher frequency. When you're on the frequency and you start thinking those thoughts, the goal must manifest. Want is only prerequisite for making a decision. Do you want to? This is what Hill started to understand after Carnegie spent 3 days explaining all of this to him. You only have to want to. That's all you have to do. But most people never learn how to make a decision. They're always going to do it at some point or another, and they fool around. Successful people make decisions very fast. When Carnegie asked Napoleon Hill to make a decision, it took only 29 seconds. But Hill had mixed something else with it. Discipline. If you're going to make it happen, you're going to discipline yourself. It doesn't matter what happens. You got to discipline yourself to live by the law. This is what I have burned into my mind. That's what I want you to burn into your mind. Give yourself a command and then follow it. You're going to have a goal. Write on a card that you carry in your pocket. I've been doing this since October 21st, 1961. I wrote on the card I was going to have 25,000 in my possession on New Year's Day, 1970. I gave myself almost 10 years to do it. I really didn't believe it would happen, but I've learned if you write a lie on the card and you read it often enough, you're going to start to believe it. The great psychologist William James said back in 1900, believe and your belief will create the fact. It's going to be easy. Oh, is it going to be easy? No, it's not going to. It's going to be tough. 60 years is a long time, but but I've never stopped studying this material. I study it every day. Here's what I've learned. You never change things by fighting existing reality. To change things, you've got to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. That's why studying these lessons is going to do for you. Get involved in the material. Share it with as many people as possible. There's no end to what you can do. Let's turn to goals. A-type goals are the ones we already know how to reach. B-type goals involve doing what we think we can do. C-type goals are the ones that you really want to accomplish, but you don't know how. You don't have to know how. We've got to go to higher where it's all possible. It's closer than our breath. What stops us? Paradigms. The programming is stopping us from doing all we're capable of doing. People sometimes ask, if spirit is perfect, how can we have lack in our soul? The truth is, you don't have any lack in your soul. The lack is in the paradigm, which is blocking the expression of the soul. You see, you don't have a soul, you are a soul. That's why there's perfection within you. The perfection is seeking expression within and through you. Why do you think we want to get things? The real underlying reason is to express the perfection within us. No one knows what we're capable of doing. An A-type goal is doing something you already know how to do. Years ago, a man came up to me and asked, "Hey Bob, would you talk to me about my goal?" "What's your goal?" I asked. "I want to get a new car." "Okay, that's a good goal," I said. "What kind of car do you want?" "A Pontiac." "I've had a Pontiac," I said. "Those are nice cars. Where are you driving now?" "A Pontiac." "How long have you had it?" 4 years. "How old is it?" 4 years. "So what you really told me is that you bought a new Pontiac 4 years ago." "Yeah. You've known for 4 years how to get a Pontiac, so that's not a good goal. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get the Pontiac, but it would not constitute a goal. A goal is something that you don't know how to get. When most people make the transition and go beyond what they already know how to get, they go after what they think they can do. So they set the goal in this way. If I get this money, if she paid me what she owed me, if he gives me what I need, and if they do this and if they do that, and if all the things fall in place, then I could reach that goal. There's no inspiration in that. You've got to get up where the air is a little thin. You've got to fantasize. But as little kids, we were taught not to do that. If we go from here to there, but we don't get the support and it doesn't work out, we come back to the starting point. Most people just stay there. Dare what you want to go after. Bet on yourself. You're the surest thing in the world. There are 3 stages of creation: fantasy, theory, and fact. Where do you start? You're thinking of what you want, you start to fantasize, and you got a beautiful picture in your mind. You're not going to get what you want by fantasizing. You've got to take the next stage. You got to take the fantasy and turn it into theory. When you use your reasoning mind, you start to think about what you want. But you've got to pass a test before you can start the theory, turn the theory into a goal. You have to ask, am I able to do this? Since you've got infinite potential, of course you could do it. Then you have to ask, am I willing? Am I willing to do what has to be done? You've got to be willing to do whatever it takes, which is what Hill did. After reading and listening to audios and my mentor, I made up my mind that I would do this. In Chicago in 1973, I was still at Langale Conant Corporation, and I left only for one reason. I was selling records and cassettes. I was watching people buy them, but they weren't using them. I went to Lloyd Conant and I said, Lloyd, we should give them the cassettes, sell them seminars, and give them the recording. No, he said, we're going to have the seminars business to, we're going to leave the seminar business to Dale Carnegie. We're going to stay in the tape business. I knew then it was time for me to leave. I'd gone there to get an education. I got an education. I was sitting at home. I was sitting in a little room in a house in Glenview, Illinois. I took my pen and wrote, I'm going to build a company that operates all over the world. So this is a somewhat long chapter, so I'm going to come back to this another time, but kind of talks about thinking and manifestation. So I think these kind of seem to pair together. So if you have any thoughts on this chapter so far, leave a comment down below and keep watching for more videos like this one on the science of getting rich, and also the secret of the science of getting rich.